Okay, let's call the order at 5 o'clock. Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. Next, I'm going to hand off to our superintendent, Andy.
Yeah, just on a very sad note, we want to acknowledge and extend our sincerest condolences to Beth Hinkle, her son Eli, and Blair for the passing of Jason Hinkle after a long battle. He was a 99 graduate of South Albany, was a teacher there and at Timber Ridge, and was involved as a coach for many, many years. The community, as well as with a large focus on South Albany High School, has supported the family through long years, and it ended this week. And we're very sorry that that occurred, and we recognize the hole that it has created in people and in the school setting. And once again, our condolences. And if anyone wants to share a record, if anyone knows him or anything.
Superintendent, Mr. Chairman, Jason inspired all who knew him with his genuine and positive attitude, no matter what was going on. He loved his family. He loved coaching kids. If anybody wants to honor Jason's life, do things that support kids, whatever that looks like to you. Our prayers and thoughts go out to Beth and the kids during this difficult time. May the outpouring of love and support from the community give some comfort to them in this difficult time.
Okay. Next up, approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the agenda as presented.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. D, board business, cell phone policy discussion. I understand, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, Bruce, but I understand you looked into this a little bit?
I did. We had a secondary principals meeting on Tuesday morning. I brought this to the attention of our middle and high school administrators. We went over the board policy and the ARs associated with that. We had some reminders about what we want to see in terms of classrooms and buildings. We will revisit that at our next principals meeting on the 12th to bring in the policies that are in place. Every one of the administrators said, yeah, this is the policy, this is what we have in place. We will look at what that means to implement the policy in terms of how that looks with students and what that looks like with students in classrooms and the expectations of our teachers as they implement that policy.
For me, all the data, everything shows that unfortunately cell phones take away from the classroom. My personal bare minimums are phones don't belong in class, and we need to give a good way that teachers and administrators can implement that and be supported. So, with that said, and with the idea that we all know that, and all the data shows that, and we all know also, everyone who's been a parent, unfortunately, has either used or seen used a phone as a babysitter, right? Because kids will look at it for a long time, right? So my big thing is hey, when we're in class, we're learning, so let's try to keep the phones out. Anybody else want to talk to that? I'm sure there are others.
Sure, yeah.
Brad.
And we're seeing districts all around us in the entire state moving towards a no cell phone policy. And I think it makes perfect sense. Sharing again my trip through Calapooia Middle School where I walked in the door, we were just getting acquainted and whatnot, and there's this huge sign that says no cell phones. And I said, wait, I had to stop the tour and said, wait a minute. And they said, oh yeah, we've done that for a couple of years now. And the halls were quiet, the classrooms were orderly, the kids were focused. And so I guess the question I would want, Bruce, you to try to figure out is, what do the principals need from us? I think that we're willing as a board to at least discuss how to bring some rules to help them get the behavior under control as best we can. And so what does that look like? Does middle school need something different than, for example, high school?
I think the policy is pretty clear. I mean, the policy states that phones are off and away, outside of before school, after school, and I believe it says during breaks. I think some schools have taken that a little farther and to say, hey, we're gonna exclude cell phone use even during breaks. And that's something that I wanna work with our building administrators on, to see what that looks like in the culture of their buildings and what that's gonna look like at different levels. So you may have different needs at the middle school level versus the high school level. And I believe that all of our administrators are super supportive of the policy and wanna see that take place. And what that looks like rolling into a new school year. And maybe looking at what it looks like implemented versus what it looks like on paper.
You know, one of my only cautions, concerns would be that all of the middle schools follow the same rules and all the high schools follow the same rules. So that there's,
100%.
okay, great. And then whatever those rules happen to shake out and be, if we need to be involved, happy to,
Right.
but.
Right, Chair Wilson, as we go through the year, you're gonna hear me consistently mention that I'm a big fan of looking at consistency and fidelity.
Good.
And that we are not pitting school against school, community against community, and well, they're doing this over here and we're not doing that over there.
Right.
That's something that I firmly believe in.
Good, excellent.
Go ahead, Roger.
So process-wise, where are we? We've got a draft, but I take it that's not a first reading.
So, we have a policy at the district, and I would tell you, my own opinion, I have kids in the district. Policy's not always being followed. You know, I mean, they're not supposed to have it in class. You know I have kids that are told in class, oh, if you're done with the work, you can get out your phone. Okay, you know, so, I mean, that's the whole reason I did a rough draft on it, because quite frankly, we're not doing the policy we have, right? So I would say the bigger issue is the policy says if we need to tweak it a little bit, that makes sense, and hopefully we want to get input. You know, that only makes sense. The whole reason this is a topic isn't because, well, it's a topic because I think we could be better. We need to be better. You know, if we want to have our kids catch up in learning, one of the big hurdles there is getting them off their phone. I mean, I know if I'm talking to my kids about what I want them to do the next day, if they have their phone in the other hand, let's be serious. You know, I get about half attention, right? So that's my concern.
So isn't it a topic because school starts in a couple of weeks and whatever the rules are going in are going to be the rules for the next year?
I will say that all of our secondary administrators were reminded of what the board policy is stated as, and that there's an expectation that we'll follow our board policy. So I need to leave it at that because I don't have all of the follow through on what that looks like in terms of accountability for kids or how they're implementing that policy. I didn't get that in that meeting. There were a lot of items to discuss to start the school year, but we will have follow-up conversation on what that looks like moving forward.
So I think at Calapooya, they have a sophisticated, non-confrontational system that they've worked out so that there aren't wrestling matches over phones, things like that. And so, again, it comes down to consistency versus severity. And it is not fair if there's a teacher who is trying to enforce the rule and the kid can say, I can do it in my other classes, right? And so I think it's most successful when we do get some consistency.
The kid might say that even if it's not true.
True.
So I'm back to, do we need to adopt a policy in the next 15 days? Or is the policy
The
that's on the
policy
books
is already
fine?
adopted and it's already present, and in the, it's included here. I mean, it literally says in the AR that cell phones are to be off and away unless it's before school, after school, or during a break. So that's how the policy's written. So as long as all of our schools are doing at least that at a minimum, then we're there.
Does the policy address enforcement?
No, the AR, there are enforcements in the AR. If I can go back. So it outlines that, I mean, personal electronic devices used in violation of the law, board policy, administrative regulation, or approved school rules will be confiscated, turned into the school office, and returned to the student, parent, or guardian following parent notification, conference, detention, suspension, expulsion, and/or referral to law enforcement officials as appropriate. So that is listed in the AR.
Confiscated by whom?
It would be either the teacher, the assistant principal, the principal.
So I'm not comfortable telling teachers they have to take people's phones. Whatever the enforcement is, and we can define it, I'm not comfortable with that. I think
I
it
think
can
there's
put
a
them in.
difference between a teacher taking the phone and holding on to that themselves, or having that go to a secure location in the office, or contacting an administrator and asking them to come in and take a student's phone.
One person trying to take a phone from another person, I don't want anything to do with.
I think usually the way that works is the student has choices. Choice A, hand over your phone. Choice B, head down to the office and explain why you don't have to hand over your phone.
Exactly.
So the teacher usually has pathways that don't involve wrestling with a kid over a phone.
Exactly.
Well, should we, I mean, you'd like to be consistent about that. I fear what the consistency is. I just,
I will say this, I don't think a principal would stand up and say, you guys are all going to begin to physically confiscate phones. There is a choice system with a set of consequences, among which, like if one or two offenses occur, there is a escalating response.
so but the policy as currently written does not make that clear. And so do we need a asterisk or a footnote to the policies to say
I don't think
that's what
so.
this means?
Yeah.
I think this policy allows that, and I think that we have that practice. Bruce shared with me that there is, a couple of schools that are going to move into conformity with the lead schools. And I think it would be great to just watch this with a report back and see how we're doing it. And we can come back with a specific report about how we're actually laying hands on a phone.
Bruce, do you think that on the next meeting, the 26th, you'd be able to get us some more data on what
Absolutely.
the principals are saying, what they think they need?
Absolutely. What I'll do is I'll collect each school's unique policy in terms of what that looks like, in terms of off and away, and then what happens if there's a violation of that policy in the building. I'll bring that
Get some
to the
alignment.
26th.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Would be wonderful.
Yeah, for me, I'm all about principals having some flexibility to enforce the way that they believe works for their building. But if we understand what the minimum, the floor expectation for everybody is, I think that'd be pretty good if it was super clear what
Yeah.
the commonality is.
Point of clarification, so this that was handed to us is,
That's a waggle from me.
okay. I wasn't sure if that was a
No.
proposal to be adopted as new policy or where that was. Okay, just want to make sure on that one.
Food for thought.
Food for thought, and in essence, me saying, as it stands now, isn't working.
Gotcha.
So we
um,
need to either step up what we got, or we're gonna implement something like this. Or at least that's my opinion.
So one more point of concern just would be the matter of storage. If we are confiscating phones from students for multiple days, how that gets done is a concern Roger's voiced. If that is done, to make sure that it's in a safe, secure location, because that could be a point of, that is a point of concern.
I would not be comfortable with, nor would I ask any administrator to confiscate a phone and hold that in perpetuity, like, we're not gonna hold that forever. That it would be, hey, we're gonna, after a certain amount of violations, a parent or guardian needs to come and pick that phone up at the end of the day. If a parent or guardian can't pick it up at the end of the day, we would have a secure location in the office for that device. I mean, they're $1,000 a piece, and we don't need to be held responsible for thousands of dollars in personal electronic devices in our schools.
I talked with Tristan about that. I believe if it goes to the office, there is a call, and they have like a 100% immediate response rate that day from the parent to get the phone, because it's important. Right?
I will say, when I was a principal, we made it the parent and guardian responsibility after the third offense. And after the fourth offense and fifth offense, the parent had to come in and get it. And there were times when the parent would say, yeah, I'm not coming to get that phone. They can be without it. And we had a safe on campus that we had things locked up in. And that was a parent's choice. What I hear you saying is you're not picking up the phone. No, I'm not. Okay.
And I think that's what we're looking for, is what are the
100%.
what's the standard procedures
Absolutely.
in the different levels to do that?
That's what I'll collect and have ready for you on the 26th.
Great. I think that'd be great.
Fantastic.
Roger, do you have anything else on that?
Not that I should say publicly.
Okay, roger that. Onward and upward. All right, school report format discussion. It says me, so for me, really what I want, and we've talked about this is I don't want to be shown different data from different schools, right? I want it to be the same. If we're gonna show one kind of data, I want to see that one kind of data from everybody. I don't want people picking and choosing, right? I think it's very important that everyone gets to talk about their strengths and weaknesses and have a little individual time, but also the five of us board members need to see some certain meat and potatoes, same things, so we can compare and contrast and understand it.
And I would take any suggestion. There are several things that, because we got a lot of schools and they report over time. And so the data, you guys are seeing iReady data. Some of the schools have the first data. Then the students are moving and progressing, and you saw that line where the kids were red and then a greater percentage of them came over. The schools at the end of the year, if you're comparing data to the schools that got to present in the fall, it's not gonna be the same. Those are transitional pieces of data.
I get that. So, I mean, for me, that would be like, let's see the last 3 sets of data, and whatever that is. If they have 2 that are this year and 1 that last, I think we want to see a little bit of the history, right? And so if that takes us 3 sets of data back or 2 sets of data back, and if they haven't got their new data, well, then they don't present that data. They present the last however many we decide of data they're going to present.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's kind of 2 sets of academic data. There's other things I'd want to hear about too, but there's year-over-year data. Where are we at compared to where we were a year ago? And where are we at with this year's kids, right? So our March presentations are going to have a much more robust how this year is going, whereas our October ones might just say, look, a year ago we were here, and this year we're here. So that you know what I mean? But we want to see growth in either case, right? You should be better this year than you were last year. And it should be your trajectory in March should look like you're making progress towards your goals, closer to your goals than where you were in November, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So from a data standpoint, that's what I'd like to see. A couple other things that I'd like to see is I'd like to see year-over-year behavior data. So it doesn't matter if it's October or March. How are you doing on referrals compared to where you were a year ago? Is that getting better year over year? And then the other thing, for me, and I get a bit of a different hit from these presentations than the rest of you because I spent so many years doing the job. But I'd like something personal that the school's working on. I know you're focused on instructional strategy, so hey, this is the instructional focus this is how it's going. We're talking about the cell phone policy. I'd love some feedback on, hey, this is going well or it's not going well for us or whatever, but just something, and that gets a little bit away from consistency, but at the same time, I felt like last year, it was pretty much, these are our scores, they're not great, we need more interventions. And I got that 20 times and I don't need to hear that anymore because A, I don't think it's an intervention problem. First of all, I think it's a core problem, and B, I don't need every school telling me the same thing. I want to hear what's unique about, I know that Sunrise is facing a very different set of circumstances in North Albany Elementary, but they both have challenges, right? So I'd like to hear a little bit about that from the principal's perspective, and reflecting the staff's perspective too.
I think for at least this first year, I think I would like some consistency on the cell phone data. Like, I feel like that shouldn't, I feel like as we go into the year, as we start experimenting with getting uniformity with the policy, having some consistency of that being on every report would be
So
helpful.
they would be like the data on cell phones confiscated, or?
Yes, and how it's going.
So I think that there's gonna be some intervention on cell phone that you wouldn't necessarily go all the way to a behavior data, right? Because I think they've worked to try to make this a fairly low level but efficient way to do it. But that could be, we're gonna see middle schools and high schools down the road, right? They're in the schedule at different times. So you're gonna see different, I would rather report on reading outcomes and math outcomes and changes in teacher strategies rather than cell phone
But I do think,
apprehension.
generally speaking, I think maybe what I'm getting at, and maybe what Sean's getting at is a bit of a feedback loop, right? We talk
Yeah.
about something here that's really important to us, and then we hear what you guys
Yeah.
have to say. It'd be good to get a feedback loop out of the buildings on some of that work, whether it's this or bias incidents or controversial issues, right? We talk about things that we think we've solved them, but we don't ever get feedback loop from building perspective on what that looks like.
Yeah. We're fine with doing that, within the report, though. So
Right,
you're
within
saying-
the report, 100%, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Roger, Brad?
No, I agree with you. Some consistency would be helpful.
So maybe you and I can work with Andy and, go ahead.
I thought I'd never say this, but I don't want the data. You can give me a book once a month on a Saturday morning, I can drink a cup of coffee. In an hour, I can see the data for every school. I mean, they're not, the data report is the data report, and we have these boxes, and people just show up and it's a number in a box. I want to know what's going on, what's working, what's not, and I guess, what is it we want out of the board meeting and the conversation? Is it a data report, or is it our opportunity to have, however brief and in public, a conversation about how it's going? And we want consistency, and we got consistency, but the consistency was just about data. It wasn't about the personalized things going on in each school. I mean, if we've seen one school, we've seen one school. They all have different challenges. They all have different successes. So maybe you can put the data stuff at the end, and you can send me the book, and I can, I don't know. It seemed very redundant, and the format, because of the difference in schools, it sometimes didn't even seem fair. And I don't know what you can do with all that, but we spent a lot of time getting presentations about numbers that was, I guess, absent of the bigger picture.
So and we can work on this. I think there's a real challenge about consistent reports and redundant when you have 20 schools,
Well,
14 elementaries.
so
Right.
if they've got 15 minutes or whatever that is, what would be wrong with the floor is there, and tell us in 15 minutes what's going on, what's good, what's breaking your heart because you can't get done. We're a school district, I guess, and we're looking at numbers and data, so it's supposed to be kind of sterile and void of emotion, I guess. But I'm in exchange, I'm looking for more of that. I can get the data without being in a board meeting or there's a much more efficient way to do that. It seems like, I don't know what it is, but there could be a better use of that time than going over standardized numbers when the inputs are different for every school and the challenges.
Well, that's gonna be hard to get both of you guys to look at the same report and both like it.
Well, so no, look, I'll look at the report. I just don't, I don't need to take everybody's time in a board meeting to do it. And it doesn't take 15 minutes to look at the numbers.
Well, and I think I have some ideas on it. I mean, again, a school gets up and says, hey, 18% of our kids passed reading last year, and this is what we're doing about it. And then another school comes up, 78% of our kids passed reading last year, and it was the same thing, right? Well, clearly that's not the same, but the way it was reported to us, it was the same, so that's too much consistency, right? We need to understand the 18% is what it is. We don't need to spend a ton of time on that, but we need to understand what is that school doing to work on that, the data that's driving the decisions. Not all the data, but what are they focused on from a decision standpoint, and what decisions is that driving, and then spend most of the time talking about that, not reading numbers off the page. At least for me, that's what I'd like to see.
I know you liked last year when Tabitha. from
Yeah,
the
that
regular-
data on instruction was great. Well, what's the teacher doing? And what are kids doing? What are teachers and kids doing? Not what are test scores doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it could make sense possibly to have the data given to us so we can read it on the report beforehand. And then if we have questions about how it's going during their presentation, if they want to just go through it really quick, if they have something they want to show us in the data that I want to focus on this slide, but if we want to ask specific questions or they want to talk about specific issues that aren't just data during the meeting, then maybe we could do that as a way of we get the information if we want it, and then they can talk about if they want to talk about straight numbers or if they want to talk about how we're getting to numbers, how we're improving numbers, what the issues are for them.
Sounds good. I think we can figure it out and we'll bring the format.
I think we have a little bit of time before our first school
We do.
presentation is scheduled, and I think there are some creative ways that we can satisfy both asks. Director Mattingly, I appreciate the fact that, hey, we want to know what's going on instructionally, how what we're doing is impacting student performance. Director Nyquist, I also understand that, hey, school's more than just numbers and data, right? It's about changing hearts and minds and having impressions and changing the lives of kids, and we have to honor that process as well. And I think there are some ways that we can get at that if we put our heads together and satisfy everybody's needs.
Okay. Next up, E, superintendent comments. Andy, the floor is yours.
So I see two items, but we have several, and we'll just put them up here and walk through that. And Jane's going to add a few things in here as well.
My mouse is stuck, sorry.
Oh. Maybe? There we go.
Sorry.
So the first thing, just to update you, in the spring, the community after-school program, which had several sites in Albany, and it was called the CAP, notified its parents that it would no longer be operational after this year. I want to thank Lori Dunmeyer, the person who had put her heart and soul into this for many years to provide after-school programs across the district in our elementaries. They were out of funds. They had been severely hurt by COVID, and she was trying to bring them back to consistency, but we would have building, one school site would lose its people, and it was just really hard for them to come back. So they folded up. It was going to be a hole in this district for after-school and before-school parent options. And so really, Chris Reese of the YMCA, John Anderson of the Boys and Girls Club stepped forward. We worked with CAP, and they have come in and taken over those sites, and they are looking to expand those. We have already had 2 meetings, and I have a monthly meeting with both of those gentlemen. And so information, we planned the transition. They have sent out registration to both programs. Some of the sites are going to be run by YMCA, some by Albany Boys and Girls Club. Together, they cover the whole thing. And of course, they also offer programs after school in their buildings. And we have bused kids from Meadow Ridge to the YMCA, where often parents are waiting to pick them up off the bus, as opposed to be able to get into a program. And that has to do with the distance, but it also has to do with the length of the bus route. And so they have already been out and have seen Meadow Ridge and have arranged to have a program out there. So there can be a program there. So I think there's some strength here having these larger organizations be able to set that up and stand it up, and they can hire deeper than the programs require. So one of the problems with the CAP organization was they needed 2 people present if one person was out. So they would send out a cancellation notice. If someone wasn't on the job, then you would have a week of service being disrupted. And that's death to a program like that, because parents immediately start looking for another option if they can't count on it. So we feel like this can give us a really solid base for after-school programs across the district. And really want to thank John and Chris and their people. They are really professional. They've worked really hard to set this up. Let's go to the next one. Susie, you want to talk a little bit about the training? You guys will recall that we had a complaint to the board, and this is follow-up on that.
So, we committed, and it's a requirement in the state this year for, sorry. So we've committed to Title IX and sexual harassment training for this year. It's a requirement statewide as of August 1st, 2024. And so we trained all of our administrators, a training was put on by ODE today, a 2-hour training for them, for building principals. And then we'll review the training and district policy on September 19th and put our processes in place. And we also added it to Safe Schools training for all staff members. So it's a really important topic and something that we need to train everyone in the district on. So our Safe Schools, which is put on by Vector Training, but it's paid for by our insurance company, PACE. And they have a really good training this year that we're adding, and everyone is adding it statewide. So just want to share that information with you.
So what we're trying to do there is accomplish that. The district, there can be sexual harassment on less than a Title IX level. And we will be making sure that people, like in the incident that came before you, we still have obligations in that training. The difference is that personnel has to determine if it qualifies as a Title IX issue. And there's some further stipulations, correct me if I'm wrong, Susie, for it being a Title IX harassment.
Correct.
Protected class, severity.
There is 6 different topics in Title IX. And many of you know that athletics has started the Title IX. But sexual harassment and class of sex and all of those things are Title IX. And so statewide, HR has gone to several trainings, and everybody statewide is making sure that everyone is trained on sexual harassment and Title IX.
Thank you. So the high school schedule, we are in a block schedule at both buildings this fall. Recent history of the work. The bargaining committee in 2022-23 had brought up the potential of a block schedule in both buildings. They had shared with us that in comparative districts, the 8 block was used predominantly. I want to say 70-some% of schools
75%.
had used the 8 block. We discussed that last summer, and it came up again as negotiations were finishing up. And we were reluctant to go to a 90-minute daily prep time. And that was in December, but already at the time of the meeting, we had not had our closing meeting with the classified, our all-night mediation. And we knew that this biennium was going to be tight. So from a financial commitment, we were unwilling to go all the way to a 90-minute prep. Let's go to the next slide. So moving to the block schedule, they will be congruent at both buildings, meaning that they will have very similar schedules. We will never get to true congruence because there will be elective programs and things that are different in the 2 schools. I know that South Albany has there's a period on Wednesday or Friday mornings, I can't remember, that will allow homerooms to be developed and kids to be checked on by homeroom teachers. We will be communicating with parents and students. We've worked on a message both from the district, and I know they have worked on the schedule. They are A and B days with 4 class minutes, 4 class periods each day, and they will be sharing those exact schedules in communication upcoming to parents. Some of the benefits that we will be sharing out, and the long history is South Albany has had a block schedule It has had a rolling 7-period day with a 6 periods offered each day. It has had a trimester, which I think was 5 credits available at a time, over the last 15, 18 years. And so there have been several different schedules. And I don't know the process of how they chose to go to those separate schedules. It's a long time ago. It increases the opportunity for kids at South Albany to get 32 credits in a 4-year time period, which we hope can take away the choice between assisting kids in an intervention class of some type and actually being able to do an elective. We believe that that could be important as well. And then just to overall help the graduation rate. 4 classes each day allows more focus on those classes, extended periods for lab-based classes such as CTE, science, performing arts, and fine arts, and fewer transitions during the day for students can improve the culture in a building. And again, we'll be sending those out here in the next couple of days, getting people ready to go back. Let's go to the next one. So Jane's going to talk a little bit about what we have shared with you already, gaps, district unemployment. Go ahead, Jane.
Yes, so when we had our last meeting in June, you had asked that I keep you updated for unemployment. And so I want to start just a little history. I know you're all aware we are self-insured, which means we pay our unemployment expenses directly. And 22-23, our expenses were $13,000. 23-24, they were $20,000. And you probably remember when we did the budget in 23-24, we established an internal services fund. And the goal at that time was to establish an unemployment reserve. And so we ended that year with a $175,000 balance, which turns out is helping us a lot in this year because our budget is $575 to add additional expenses of $400,000 because we had hoped to have a reserve. And the expenses that I see, because we're invoiced quarterly, we won't see the unemployment that has been requested until October as far as an actual invoice. I've talked with our agent and he believes we'll be around $700,000. So far, approximately 100 classified employees have filed for unemployment. We see a few every day. They're continuing to file for unemployment. And so it makes it harder to project, right? When they do apply, they have a 1-week waiting period, and then they can begin to collect. And almost every request is approved. And it's not by us, it's by whomever at the unemployment department denies or approves the claims. Chris? Thank you. This is just if we're trying to project our expenses. We have 408 FTE that are classified 9-month employees, and their average salary is around $30,000. And an employee who earns around $30,000, if they were to request for every break that's optional, spring break, the summer breaks, all of them, they could receive an additional $5,000. And so if you take 5,000 times 408, it's 2 million. So if half of all of them end up claiming, it would be 1 million. So as we look forward to future years, that's the kind of liability that we will be looking at.
Let's go back. So a couple things to add. I was looking for hands. Still in the audience?
Yes.
Sorry. So you had written, and so I'm going to quote you, but you can correct it. But one of the things that was a parameter of the law going in was that staff who worked directly in instruction were not eligible. Hands in the article, Hans said that they are finding that they're eligible. And I don't recall if you remember that, but if you have questions after the meeting, you can talk with Hans. But what we are finding is that there are really no exceptions. People are getting it. So every $100 million at the state level in a biennium. So if the state gives us, they gave us 10.2, to go 100 million to 10.3, a 100 million with our current enrollment is equal to $750,000 a year, right? And so this would be, if it was 1 million, this would be the equivalent of about $150 million at the state level to cover it in the biennium, right? Which is, you know, we fight hard for every 100 million. But our position will be, if this is the requirement, if this is the new reality, then that should be allocated to us, right? So that's the challenge. That number, so Jane is saying that we're on track to about 750,000?
Right, so currently, we're at approximately 100 employees. And those are mainly our 9-month employees. And so right now, we would be looking at 500,000. But we see it increasing every day. And so that, when I kind of went over our account with our representative at the unemployment office, he thought our costs, our liability for the year would be between 600,000-700,000. Worst case scenario, $1 million. And remember, our budget's 575, so if we end up at 600,000, that would be amazing.
So we anticipated it. I think several of the local districts have just carried on their old, like, we budget this. And I think you may have seen that Corvallis has set aside 40,000, and now they face a cost of about $1 million, right? So it is one of the things, we'll talk about this on the next slide. Anything else, Jane?
No.
So we talked about this in the budget, but we have some variables to account for that will allow us to see the projected budget through the year. And, you know, if there's anything that has been a primary focus, is to gather the systems in the district and the district office and the school offices too, because they track enrollment and other things that are really critical to us being able to draw in that big picture. But we knew that this was going to be a tough biennium in 2022-23, in my first year coming down here. We already knew that there was going to be a huge kicker and that was going to make this low. And so we have had to work really hard to grab, to cut, and to find things that can carry us through these 2 years and meet the requirements that are in front of us. And so unemployment, kind of a surprise in this whole thing. We had to set money aside. I think that in general, compared to a lot of districts, we're fairly in the neighborhood in terms of what was allocated to cover it and what it ends up costing us. So I don't think there's a huge difference there that's going to surprise us and force us to cut 300,000 or whatever. But we do have to watch that. The second one, enrollment versus our projections for budget. That's going to be critical. We won't see that until early October. Right now, we're already hearing the principals say, wow, we're way up, but we have not exited out students who have moved away yet. That generally occurs in September. Where's that kid? And then you get a request for a record, you send that on to the next school, and your enrollment comes down a little bit. It would be great to see some improvement in that number, because of course that's how we're funded. Of course, bargaining was certified. We're meeting tomorrow with them, starting at 8:00 a.m. And I look forward to a day with them and lots of stuff to go through there. And then the fourth, this occurred, so I'm on a funding committee for COSA, and what we're working on is to improve funding for education in the state. That's our sole work. But in the process of this, different people were saying, hey, we got noticed about this. You will recall in the June board meeting, we were noticed in late June. I think it was the day before that meeting, June 23rd, we got noticed that the state was reaching in to claim $800,000 back from us. So one superintendent stood up and said, hey, they corrected my funding this week for, because they had me pay more for summer school, and we didn't even have summer school. It was it was a carve out. Another one said, we all got notice that there was a correction positive because they had made a mistake in the small and rural schools fund, and so that was coming. And they notified us that we will receive money, and they said it will come to you not later than October of 2025. So it seems like they take their time paying us, but they take ours immediately. So there were about 5 different ways that the state was correcting errors, and it was creating an instability in funds at the state. And I'm a little nervous about that. The June one, typically you do get announced in May that you have a May adjustment, and that can be up or down. But then most districts finish their budget later in June. And we cannot account for that, which is why we need to continue to have an ending fund balance. So how that would look would be, as we get through the different things and we begin to figure out what that is, Jane will be letting you know what is our ending fund balance projected to be, and are we still in decent shape. We know that a couple districts, I think Harrisburg's about to go through it, Newburgh, Silverton, they ran that down and continued to run that down, and they just didn't have any cushion there. Any questions about those or the thinking?
I have many, but I'll ask one.
Okay.
So with declining enrollment statewide and the level of decline versus other districts is less than, how does that cost us money? Because there's a total dollar amount distributed to schools, and that amount is not changing, right? Or is it? I'm assuming it's not.
No, it's a set amount.
Right. And so, and they would do that based on so much per student, however they do it. But so we decline by 2%. The average statewide is 3.5%. One would think that our revenue would go up and not down because we're better than the average.
So, and Jane, you can add to this, but there is a thing that the state has by statute. We call them the carve-out list, right? And carve-outs are taken and sequestered into funds which are allocated on different formulas other than that funding formula. Would that be fair? Mm-hmm. So what you saw in June was the state enhancing a couple of those carve-outs within the statutory limits. And I think one of those was helping districts with local options, yes. Right? Which I can only say my speculation is that is to try to help districts that have the local options, which tend to be the metro, and there was perhaps a little bit of, we're going to take a little bit from everybody to help. Yeah. So it is, so it's just that just a little bit of insecurity about what more they could do, like what they can do statutorily.
And Roger, the increase we received per ADMW did not offset the decrease in the number of students and the correction was not just 23-24, but also 22-23.
So, I'm not even going to repeat what you just told me. But if they don't get called on it, you should be nervous, right? Is somebody calling them on that?
That's what our group is doing. We are talking about that. And I think the fairness is the order of the food line in the biennium, because the SEIU and state agencies bargain that spring, and then we get what we get. And so Governor Kotek has changed the funding formula to help education. And now our challenge will be, you know, it was kind of a low ball. And so now we got to figure out how to fight and argue our way to more revenue above what we have. So the SEIU, this biennium, when we all are facing these funds, they got 6% both years. And they bargained that as they built the budget. While we got a 3% assumed increase both years in funding. So Morgan Allen, who is the COSA lobbyist, said this. He said, I think what we need to do, the only way we could be ahead of the game would be to go to statewide bargaining. Then we would have a group like that. And I don't think that's just really pie in the sky. So we've got a challenge. It looks like there is a change in the formula a little bit. We don't think it hurts, but our great danger is that now the governor has said, yeah, I fixed that, and it still is not enough. It does not do a great job of overcoming the last 3 years of inflation. It's better, but we regard it as just a starting point. Any other questions? I rest.
Okay, next up is reports. Summer building projects. Dave.
I have the pleasure of reporting not only just what's happening with facilities in our larger projects, but I'm going to share with you some brief happenings in each of our departments over summer. We can have more detail in the months to come with that. Overall impressions, I saw outstanding examples of teamwork. I saw outstanding examples of planning. The monitoring, especially with our tech department, is outstanding. I saw outstanding individual efforts by employees. Our communication was solid. I saw some outstanding examples of dedication that I'd like to share with you over time that occurred as well. I also saw a lot of opportunities for improvement. So even though I think we had a great summer, it was a great effort, we have great employees working over there. And several examples over my career, people have talked about classified staff being backbone of the district. That's a concept that I'm going to explore more with them and bring you more examples. I want you to listen for that as I go through my presentation as well. So just a groundsigning overall summer were my impressions. Specifically with large projects, Sunrise is on track for occupancy in August 26. We're trying to get the office staff in there before that time. Triple Wellman has done an outstanding job. We're on budget. We have had some change orders, which we expected. We're using up some of the contingency funding. There was some piping that needed to be re-upgraded. We made some roofing corrections. I'm going to show you a picture. That roof drains internally. That was done before my time a couple years ago. That roof was redone. They didn't put overflow drains in several locations. We added those once we discovered those. So that was a change that we made. We had some electrical upgrades, mainly in the kitchen area. And I want to clarify that the spec that was created in about 2015-16 about when we refurbish our existing buildings not to add AC into our classrooms, the standard was to add AC into the office areas, and there is air conditioning in that office area. We discovered that when we pulled the units out of the yard. Central Elementary School is on track to have ventilation operational before the start of the school. That's been a huge project for our HVAC staff, and they've done an outstanding job there. Basically, from the start of summer to the currently, we've had multiple staff members working on that project all summer long on a daily basis. So, Community Transition Program, I think we reported last spring that we were making the purchase and moving that program out to LBCC. We have done that. We've executed the lease documents as well. And we started some repairs while the building was empty with using the grant funds provided. The carpet has been redone. Looking at bids right now for roofing, siding, and painting, and then redoing the access ramp in the back. And I have some pictures to show you here just in a minute. So So here's the pictures of the top of Sunrise. You can see that the units that are placed at the top, they're large units. It just gives you perspective on the size of the units there. You can see the empty spots on the lower building there where the cafeteria is. This was halfway through the project and those hadn't been placed yet. But that's the scope of the project. The rooms on the top there, you see the little units. Those units weren't touched there. Those units do have AC on that end to the buildings, and those were done in prior years. But that's the top of Sunrise. So the location of the program that we purchased at LBCC is the English Language Arts and Culture Institute. That's the building that we purchased for the CTP program. You can see its location there on campus. And that's a picture of what the facility looks like on the outside. Pretty current picture. And so continuing on with some projects with facilities, the West Albany High School gym was sanded down and resurfaced from damage that was done to it during the construction of the building. But that is completed. And you can see a picture of it. Turned out pretty well. They're going to make some corrections to it over Christmas time and some ads that we saw, but overall it was really done well, and it looks really good. It's great for students to come back to. We did a lot of staff movements over the summer. Just Serve is a partner with the community. They addressed the grounds at Memorial, Calapooya, Waverly, and Timber Ridge. Our neighborhood church group supported us at South Albany and Lafayette. We painted 20 classrooms. We had AJ, our custodial specialist. He's good at securing desks and refurbished materials across the state, and we have about 100 desks replaced. We did a lot of security camera work, a lot of alarm upgrades. We've addressed a lot of concrete repairs over the summer. We did some pest management additions, mainly for bird mitigation and things like that. We're currently doing playground assessments, and Lauren has started a bid project with the state with facility conditions and American with Disability Act assessments. We're going to be bringing that to you during the year. That's a big project to help inform us on our CFU list moving forward. So we're looking forward to that. Work orders, again, a lot of work orders completed. Outstanding effort over there. Custodial. Small teams were designed this year. So each elementary had teams of 3, and they would partner with each other's schools. So we at least have 3 employees in each school. They do an outstanding job of a deep cleaning process. They remove all the furniture from the room. They start from the top to the bottom, and they clean everything in the room. They do a great job. It was reported by AJ that we replaced over 1,500 light bulbs in that process. So that's a lot of light bulbs. In the exterior, we focused on cobweb removal, window cleaning, training. They had a new boost machine that scrubs the floor down, saves us a gym or an area, cafeteria area that would take us a day to scrub. Now it takes us about 2 hours, and doing some training on concrete floor sealing as well. And then the cleanup of the sanding project at West Albany Gym was a big project to do. A lot of dust gets created, and then we're preparing for tackling Sunrise as soon as possible when they get everything buttoned up to get there cleaned up and ready for school. Technology, outstanding effort there as well. Very organized, great monitoring of projects there as well. So staff account automation was enhanced. The 2,500 Chromebooks were deployed. They wanted me to make sure if you stack them up, they're the same height as the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So they want to make sure that I mentioned that. Network equipment and security updates. What was important there was a full inventory. We went through and really inventoried what we have, and that was done really well. Some enhancements with Parent Square, so all staff now are in Parent Square, so I'm looking forward to seeing that in action. Security improvements. Our outdated projectors and document cameras were replaced using ESSER funds. 20 new line interactive TVs installed, which is really popular within the districts. All Chromebooks cleaned and repaired. Our student employees that we had were fantastic this summer. Multiple times that was commented to me. Stadium Wi-Fi and cameras repairs and upgrades were done. Chromebook carts at each middle school. All those Chromebook carts were donated and secured from other districts. And then our desktop replacements that you folks approved for funding, we're on track. We completed 2023 and we're on track for 2024, 25. For example, when we went in and did desktop replacements, all the technology staff went in and did it all within a day or two. So that was where a great example of teamwork. Food service had a lot of hiring to do this summer and implemented some changes across the district, and then electrical upgrades as well in these schools. I'm looking forward to the burger slide station and the pizza stations. I'm hearing great things about those from Scott, our food service director. Keeps it warmer, longer, better product. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Also some changes in kitchens for workflow enhancements, and we got new truck lift gates that were outdated. Transportation, up there in the corner, the swells, there's been a crew working on those swells. Our grounds at transportation look fantastic. If you have a chance, drive through there. They did an outstanding job getting those cleaned up, and those are hard to do. Hiring, courses, reviewing all the routes, creating snow routes for next year. All that time, we were running 12 programs, about 6 drivers daily, 33 trips. We do trips for all those groups. The mechanics are doing annual inspections. I went in there one day, there was 3 motors on the floor, so they're retrofitting buses, taking bus motors out of other buses into other ones to make sure our fleet is maintained. And then we also serviced all of our maintenance vehicles as well over the summer, which was really important. And the auto service workers were responsible for cleaning up the grounds. They did a great job. So that's a brief overview of what's happened. A lot of work.
You mentioned Central. Where are we with all the Central stuff? We pretty much got that done at this point, it sounds like.
Yeah, the heating will come. So we'll have ventilation in place before school starts. The heating will come. They did maintain some of the units in the radiators in there to do heating in case we can't make the switch in time. But we're on track for the ventilation piece, which is the huge piece, especially if there's fires. It'll bring high quality air into the room, filtered air. The staff even recognized that the rooms that we did the tests on over the summer when they went in there, significantly cooler than the rooms that they were working on. Just by pulling in outside air, in the middle of the night, it's cooling those rooms off. So they noted that, and that's why they made a really hard push to at least get the ventilation systems running for cooler air for that building.
So lots has been done, it sounds like, and we're moving towards it. So that's fantastic. Hopefully they will be appreciative and they deserve it. So that's good. Okay. Next up, old business, interdistrict transfers. Andy and Bruce.
So your request, we did some background in looking at the decision in February to update our allowed transfers into the district from outside the district. I will confess that when we did look at that policy, I did speak to you with the existing policy, and that the purpose of not allowing 12th graders in was to protect the graduation rate. I think Susie has shared with me, Susie, you can confirm this, that was not something that you don't remember when that came in or that you were the cause. So I don't really know how long ago that existed, but I do know that when we talked about it, I did share with you that it was to avoid the idea that a senior without credits would come in and then you're stuck with a kid and they don't help your graduation rate. And so that does cost us a kid. You had asked as well that we look at how we protect Albany options, which in this region is the outstanding place where a student could come in order to finish. And so by law, you must say how many kids can come in. You cannot say we want kids who are on track to graduate only. You can't say those things. You can't say no special ed kids. All you can say is the number of kids that you can bring in. And I believe the admission is in the second attachment, or the third attachment, I'm sorry. And but you do have the right to close a given facility. And so we have the ability to say, we'll take this many kids at a grade level, this program is closed. So people cannot, from outside the district, say, we want to go to Albany Options. That building is at capacity, and if we had 2 of those buildings, it would be great. But, so we can say, kids can't come in and transfer there. But we still cannot say anything about the characteristics of the kids and set any requirement there. Other districts are open at 12th. I will say that, in the area. I was surprised, actually. I thought that there would have been somebody, Susie, that could have said why it came, so I can't say that. Okay.
So, if I might, Mr. Chairman, we, over time, have looked at enrollment. We've looked at the declining enrollment rate. All of us have expressed a concern about that to some extent. There's a matter of scale for this district that whether you're at 9,200 kids or 9,700 kids, equal expenses don't necessarily follow that. So it's our benefit to reverse that trend line. And the current policy seems inconsistent with our goals in doing that. And I would be in favor of passing this evening.
What is passing this? What are we passing?
A change in policy.
For what?
Is the
No,
one
I
that's
don't
in,
think we are changing the policy.
is it the one that's in the board book the current one, or is that the to be amended to one potentially?
These are that exist. You would need to verbally make a motion
To what, though?
to,
We're not changing policy. I'm sure we're not.
it's the number of students allowed at each level. And Chris, is that one of these? I may have pulled
Correct.
up. Which one is it?
You need to make a motion to accept however many,
So in
grade
February,
12.
because by policy, we have to do this by March 1st. And in February, we made a decision. At that time, we said 0 seniors.
Correct.
Now, you want to change that decision and add seniors. Even though we're past, and even though we're past the March 1st date, is that a violation of our own policy? Or are we changing our policy to say by August 14th, we make the decision? Or what's
The law allows boards to amend
to amend our
the
decision?
number.
Okay. We're just amending that decision. We're not changing the policy.
But it's also important that if you're going to do that, there's going to have to be some sort of a period to accept.
Yeah.
The policy states that the board approves the number of transfers by grade level.
So,
The recommendation in February was grades 1 through 11, did not include grade 12. So that's
Okay.
what you're looking at.
so, Mr. Chairman, I would move to increase the accepted enrollment number by 20 students with an open window up until October 1st for seniors.
Okay, but as of right now, seniors aren't part of it, right?
That's right.
Okay, so we're talking about opening up 12th grade.
Correct.
20. How many do we have for the other grades?
50.
Why 20 for this one?
My very unscientific amateur research indicates that there could be up to 20 that would be interested in doing this. You can raise it, you can go more than that if you want.
I'd be open to 50 if they came.
Yeah, I mean, I'd amend that at least to stay consistent,
Okay,
because it's 50 everywhere else.
I'll accept a friendly amendment to move the number to 50 instead of 20.
I second.
Discussion?
What about the window? October 1st sufficient?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I thought, my concern is the timings of, for people that called us in July and said, take seniors and we can't get back in touch with them, but that is what it is. Understanding, if I'm understanding correctly, is we don't allow seniors, we don't know why we don't allow seniors, we just never have. There doesn't seem to be any reason or any letting seniors come in. That's what I'm getting from everybody. So may as well do it. And I think go until October
Yeah,
1st.
so you can take a kid in, you still have, with an interdistrict transfer, you can revoke that for behavior and non-attendance.
Non-attendance, yeah.
Those are the two things, and they've been preserved in the current law, even though we've done a lot of changes to this law.
Mhm.
I think the one thing that is truly different now is you just get a number and you have to let kids in.
Yeah.
Right?
And you're gonna have to take in CTP, you're gonna take 18 to 21-year-old CTP kids too.
That any student that would want to transfer from another district,
Yeah.
we would have to accept up to 50 students. We have no ability to look at,
Right.
Good.
they're eligible to transfer, we would take any student.
So you're nervous that we're gonna put together a good program out there?
I'm not nervous. I know we have an outstanding program, especially compared to districts around us, but I'm okay with bringing them in. Bring them in. I think those kids should have a good program. So I don't have any problem with it. I
50
just,
students is 10 teachers.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you should be aware that that's a
Yeah.
possibility because they do have a really great program, but I'm not opposed to that.
My only concern, and I'm all for voting for it, is, and us keeping track of it, not many, we'll see, not many students transfer their senior year
That is correct.
unless there's a reason,
That is correct.
right? Most of the time, kids that transfer their senior year that have a reason probably aren't the average kid,
That is correct.
okay?
In
So,
my experience,
right, so the average kid might cost the average amount, right? The non-average kid probably costs more than the average amount, right? And that's not what we get funded for. So I'm all for this, but I want us to track it and figure out how that works.
I would say in my experience, any student that's transferring as a senior is going to come with a story.
That's my concern. Okay, so we have a motion?
Quick question, just to clarify. So we're admitting it to K through 12, 50 per grade, with this year having an open enrollment period to October 1st, and then after this year, the same transfer windows as previously stated.
I would say that because we're amending this, we would only be amending for seniors because we're adding seniors. So I don't believe we would need to reopen the window for K-11 to October 1st. It would just be for seniors to October 1st.
Correct.
But the next year we would go back to the same windows as currently exists.
We would be able
Get
to
a new
discuss.
chance.
Okay.
Any more discussion items?
You need to restate the motion so that we're clear.
I think we're clear, but we can restate it if need be.
Open enrollment for seniors only through October 1st,
Up to 50.
up to 50.
And it'll revert back next year.
Well, we set it each year.
Okay. Okay, no more discussions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's February, so we're probably gonna ask the question about senior transfers in February, so be prepared. But other than no other questions.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And to be clear, this takes effect immediately.
Yes.
Thank,
Your votes would.
thank you.
Right. Okay. Future agenda items, other business, looking for another motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn this meeting. Wait,
what?
what? Oh, Roger.
Not so fast.
Go ahead.
Look,
What do you got, Roger?
I appreciate all the work that everybody has done on the block schedule situation at South. I am very concerned that that change will not affect all kids equally. And don't ask me how I know this, but I would imagine that there are some kids who struggle to get through 50 minutes sitting still, and you're moving it to 90, and how that impacts them in the way of attendance and in the way of what they're learning, I'm concerned about. So I hope that we're at least tracking that and watching that, and if we need to make some adjustments or do something to mitigate that, I hope we would be open to that.
Certainly.
You ready now?
Sure, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
All in favor, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're done. Thank you, everybody.
Hey Susie, are we at 9?
9.
You know?